This is a community notification and education presentation hosted by the Rochester Police Department. The purpose of this video is to provide information regarding a predatory offender who moved to Rochester on April 13th, 2026. The state of Minnesota requires that we follow certain guidelines, including what information is shared and how it is shared. I am Amanda Grayson, Crime Prevention and Communications Coordinator for the Rochester Police Department. Joining in this presentation are Heather Coling, Department of Corrections Victim Services Specialist, Robin Wood, Intensive Supervised Release Agent for Dodge and Olmsted Community Corrections, but we begin with Brian Heinzone, Risk Assessment Supervisor for the Department of Corrections. Brian?
All right, thanks, Amanda. All right, as Amanda said, I'm Brian Heinzone. Just a brief introduction. Been with the Department of Corrections for 28 years now. Started in 1998. I was a therapist in the treatment program for people who've committed sex offenses. As a therapist, did that work for 6 years, and then moved down 22 years ago now to my current unit, Risk Assessment Community Notification. I currently supervise the 6 psychologists in the unit that write risk level recommendations. Today, we're going to talk about a level 3 individual that's released in the community. The psychologists that work for me write the risk level recommendations, level 1, 2, or 3. We'll talk about that a little bit throughout the presentation, what those terms exactly mean. Yeah, we'll get rolling on some general facts. So here's the agenda. We're going to talk about predatory offender registration, what that means, and then community notification, how that's tied together. There's tied closely together, but function a little differently. And then risk level assignment, the ECRC, or End of Confinement Review Committee. We refer to it as ECRC, assigning of the risk levels. As you're aware today, Mr. Mayer was assigned to risk level 3, so we'll talk about him more specifically. And then we'll have Heather and Robin jump in to talk about victim services side of things and supervision elements for Mr. Mayer. All right, so just kind of a general slide. People that have committed sex offenses and people that are required in Minnesota to register for having committed sex offenses have always been in the community. They will continue to be. Some are under supervision, some are not. There's a lot of different kind of management tools that we can bring to bear for individuals that we're working with in that regard. But just kind of a general statement about, you may know somebody who's committed a sex offense, you may work with them, you may live with them, you may be a family member, relative. People exist in the community, and we manage them as needed, required by law enforcement and depending on what they've been convicted of. So registration, many people who grew up in Minnesota anyways have been familiar with the case of Jacob Wetterling. Jacob was a 11-year-old boy in 1989. He was riding his bike with his brother and another friend of theirs to return a movie, I think, to a convenience store. This was back in 1989, VHS tapes. They asked their parents, hey, can we bring the movie back, get some stuff, drive up to the store? Sure, not a problem. Grew up in St. Joseph, Minnesota, small town, very safe in general. But while they were riding their bikes to return that movie, they were confronted by a masked man with a gun who asked them their ages. The other 2 individuals, the brother and friend, told him their age. Jacob told him his age, and he told the other 2 to get away. So he abducted, kidnapped Jacob at that time. And we didn't know anything about what had happened to Jacob until 2016, 2017, I believe it was, when an individual came on our radar who had committed a series of sexual assaults in a neighboring community that were similar, did not involve, they were essentially, the victims were let go, but it was masked at gunpoint. There was actually some DNA that was involved and tied to a guy named Timothy Heinrichs, who eventually got on the radar with the Jacob kidnapping and eventual murder, as we'll find out. So he was, the statute of limitations had run out actually on that prior crime. It was a guy named Jared. I believe he's an adult now. Since that time, the legislation has changed to where we don't have, the statute of limitations had run out on that crime, so unable to be charged for the sexual assault against Jared. But DNA tied him to this Timothy Heinrichs. They did a search warrant on Tim's home and found child pornography or child sexual abuse materials. And so federally, he was charged with the possession of that material. As a part of the plea agreement, the Wetterling family came together with the prosecutors and everybody that was charging Mr. Heinrichs with a federal case and said, if you confess to what you did to Jacob, we're not going to pursue murder charges, that whole thing. So he, as a part of the plea, confessed to sexually assaulting and murdering Jacob on that night in 1989. He's currently serving a federal prison sentence for that crime. So as a part of that whole situation, Patty and Jerry, his Jacob's parents, talked to law enforcement and said, is there any kind of list of people that have committed these types of crimes before? Like, first of all, what's the motivation behind this crime? They said probably a sexually motivated crime. He's an 11-year-old boy. There's no, it's not money related, anything like that. So likely a sexual motivation. And they said, well, is there any kind of list of people who've done this before that we could go to rule them out, rule them in from an investigative standpoint? And there was no such list. Hence, the Jacob Wetterling Crime Against Children Act, developed in 1991, July 1st, as you see there on the screen. Now, anybody who's charged with a registration eligible offense. Minnesota is a little different in that regard too, in terms of registration. A lot of states require the individual to be convicted of the registration offense. So let's say criminal sexual conduct, first degree in Minnesota. In Minnesota, how we work it is if they were charged with a registration eligible offense, but then convicted of something arising out of the same set of circumstances, they are also required to register. So it's more broad than many states in terms of the number of people that are covered. Like I said, many states, they would have had to have been convicted of the criminal sexual conduct or sexual assault, whatever the statute is in that varying state. With Minnesota, because of plea agreements, naturally nationwide too. So the example I always use is let's say somebody broke into a home of an adult woman, sexually assaulted her, dragged her out of the bedroom, sexually assaulted her in the kitchen. He was charged with first-degree burglary for breaking into an occupied residence, criminal sexual conduct for sexually assaulting the woman, and kidnapping for moving her from one place to another in the residence. Let's say he takes a plea agreement to that burglary first degree. That's not a registration eligible offense, but because he was initially charged with criminal sexual conduct and kidnapping, took a plea agreement to the burglary, he is now required to register. So it sort of avoids the loophole of maybe guys getting out of registration who aren't convicted of a sex or sex-related offense. The registration initially started 91, as I mentioned. It was your main residence. You had to update with the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. The BCA in Minnesota is the governing body that oversees the registration. We work closely with them from a community notification standpoint, which I'll talk about in a minute, but they oversee the registration, the registry, which currently has, I believe, about 19,000 people. Let's see if we get that. Yeah, close to 20,000 people on the registry, right, as we speak. But it's kind of expanded over the past several years with varying, usually how it changes is because of other crimes that are committed. So there was a woman named Katie Poyer from Moose Lake, Minnesota, was working at a convenience store, late 90s, maybe 96, 97, something around then. She was a convenience store clerk. A guy came in, his name we find out later is Donald Blom, kidnapped her, brought her to his cabin in the Moose Lake area. His primary address was in I think the Richfield area. He left prison. He had a long history of sexual assaults against teen girls and adult women. Left prison in the late 80s, I want to say, or early 90s, prior to registration coming into effect. So he was not subject to registration at the time. One of the things about the original registration with, in terms of Donald Blom, was these secondary residences. Like I mentioned, his primary residence was in Richfield, but he had a cabin in Moose Lake, which is where he abducted Katie and murdered her. Her remains were found in his fire pit. So subsequent to that, now the registry has taken on secondary addresses. Any address, maybe they have a partner, significant other, that the girlfriend, boyfriend that they spend frequent time at, they have to register their address. Any motorized vehicles, including, ATVs, boats, anything like that needs to be registered. Your place of employment, your phone number, if you're attending school address and information. So it's very comprehensive now. In Minnesota, it's a felony to fail to register. We see a lot of guys coming back to prison all the time for failure to register. Generally, research has shown that the reason why people fail to register is not because they want to go underground and commit all these new sex offenses, right? It's more, I started using drugs again. I was jumping from couch to couch. I didn't really have a stable environment. It wasn't the top of my priority list to register my address, right? Usually we see guys like that end up coming back to prison for just kind of general lifestyle instability. That's what I would say. So that's the registration piece. Most of the offenses are going to be criminal sexual conduct or something sex related. We also have a smaller group of individuals who maybe were convicted of a non-sex related kidnapping. We used to have false imprisonment was on the registry for many years. That is no longer the case. But most of the time we were seeing people that were charged with false imprisonment, maybe a domestic assault, kind of a domestic assault situation. They didn't let their girlfriend or wife or partner leave the home, or they locked them in a room, something like that. So we had many individuals on the registry for non-sex related crimes. That's why it's called predatory offender registration. So a small subset of those folks are also on the registry. Here's some numbers. I mentioned before, close to 20,000 people registering in the state of Minnesota. In terms of Olmsted County, 412, just as of yesterday. 19 of those, the 19 there means the number of level 3s in the community. So out of 357 of those registrants are in the city of Rochester, and 18 of those level 3 individuals reside in the city of Rochester right now. And then just some information about neighboring counties, Dodge, Fillmore, Mower, Winona. You see the numbers there, and then the numbers of level 3 individuals so 3 in Dodge, 7 in Mower, and 7 in Winona, none in Fillmore apparently, out of 49 registered individuals. So notification happened starting in Minnesota in January of 1997, related to a case most people are familiar with, what's called Megan's Law. So there was a girl, I think she was seven or eight, Megan Kanka from New Jersey, previously convicted sex offender, had been released from prison, and moved in next door to her family. He, under the guise of seeing a new puppy that he apparently had, coaxed Megan over to his home, sexually assaulted and murdered her. And so then the parents were like, hey, would have been information we would have liked to have known. This guy was moving in next door to us. So that's how Megan's Law and the Community Notification Act started in Minnesota, nationwide. Just like registration, notification is also in all 50 states. Every state does it a little bit differently. Minnesota bases it on the risk to reoffend. Some states just put everybody on the public website. They don't really look at the risk in terms of low, moderate, or high. We break that down. Hence, Mr. Mayor, that we'll learn about in a minute, was designated a level 3 individual. It's the highest risk to reoffend, scores higher on these actuarial instruments. We want broad public notification based on the type of offenses Mr. Mayor committed. We have a number of level 2 and a number of the vast majority level 1 individuals. I'll get to some stats on that in a minute. But beginning for anybody who was required to register and was being released from prison January 1st of 1997, we started establishing those risk levels. So notification applies to those people that are registering for an adult-based sex offense. They committed this as an adult or were certified as an adult, as Mr. Mayor was. We'll talk about him in a second. And then are released from prison, mainly prison. Sometimes state hospitals can come into play too, but the predominant number of people are being released from a correctional facility in Minnesota, subject to notification for that reason. A couple people do not, they still may need to register as a predatory offender, but are not subject to the risk level assignment. Those would be people that are either still living in the community on probation. Let's say they were convicted of criminal sexual conduct, 3rd degree, and given 20 years probation. So they're in the community. They have to register their address and all the other things I mentioned with the BCA, but they do not get a risk level assigned. So they just need to keep their registration up to date. That also includes people who are registering solely on the basis of a juvenile adjudication. So if you had somebody who was 14, 15, convicted of criminal sexual conduct, 3rd degree, let's say against their 10-year-old sister, they're registered for that offense. They are not subject to community notification. So let's say they come into prison as an adult, they're still registering on that juvenile offense, but now they committed a driving while intoxicated. They're in on a felony DUI offense in prison. Upon release, they have to register, but because their offense was committed as a juvenile, they are not subject to community notification. So we have guys who've been registering for sex offenses or other predatory offenses since the early 90s who are now close to 50 years old. I see guys come through that all the time. They haven't reoffended sexually. Their last known sex offense was 1994. They were 14 and now they're 48. And they just continue to come back to prison for other non-sex related, non-registration type offenses. So that's kind of how that works. Department of Corrections, so my unit, Risk Assessment Community Notification, is responsible for assigning the community notification risk levels, level 1, 2, and 3. Breaking all the levels down, level 1 is the local law enforcement agency is aware or made aware of this individual moving to their community. Any victims or witnesses to the crime that want to be notified. So generally with Heather's unit, victim services, anybody who wants to be notified, there's a separate process for that. But it's really a restricted notification process for the level 1 individuals. That's about 55 to 60% of the people go out as a level 1. I'll show a slide on that a little bit later. Level 2 is about the top 20 to 25% or so have been assigned to risk level 2. That's higher risk to reoffend than what we call moderate risk to reoffend. So they would be subject to the notification as a level 1 individual would. In addition to that, anywhere that may cater to like a victim pool, let's say a guy has an offense against a teen girl, and while on probation for that offense, he was hanging out at high school parties. Maybe he had like a 16-year-old in his car. They were drinking together, just high risk kind of situations. At our end of confinement review committee, where we're assigning a risk level to this individual, we may say, you know, he's got the one offense, but he's engaged in high risk behavior while on probation with this kind of teen population. Seems to have some focus on teen girls. So that level of notification would allow maybe places that cater to that teenage population. Maybe they hang out at a local gym or area in the community that's not normally supervised with adult supervision. That agency or place could be notified in a level 2 situation. And then level 3, as we'll hear about Mr. Mayor, higher risk individuals. It's about the top 12 to 15% of guys in the 27 years we've been doing this have been assigned a level 3. So it's that very top level folks. They're going to be on our public DOC website. They're going to be on any kind of notification that Amanda and her group do in Rochester, whether it's a Facebook post. Some people have been on billboards, any kind of notification, newspaper, radio, television, any ways of notifying folks there. So here's some of the numbers I mentioned before. We got about 56% or so level 1s historically over the last 27, 28 years. 25 to 29, 30% level 2, and then that top 12 to 15% have been designated level 3. As of yesterday, 433 registrants were subject to broad community notification living in the community of Minnesota. 10 of those folks, we don't know their whereabouts. So they failed to register. They're off the radar at this point. 10 of those folks. Law enforcement, everybody involved is, of course, trying to get those folks back on the registry and find out where they are and that whole situation. But as you see, the vast majority of people are registering their address. We know where they're at. So that's good. In terms of the kind of acquaintanceship here, this slide, it's dated a little bit, but it's pretty consistent. The data, even back to 2000, about 60% of the folks are going to be some kind of an acquaintance or family member. The top 7% are people that offend against strangers. Mr. Mayor, who you'll learn about today, did offend against strangers. That's a rare occurrence, especially for somebody his age. He was 16 or 17 when he committed these crimes. We don't see that a lot. He was certified as an adult, sent to prison, and now is being released for the first time as an adult at age 30, after coming into prison at age 17, 18. All right. Age of the victims is pretty consistent throughout. You have about a third adult victims, a third teenage victims, and a third kind of prepubescent or under age 12 in terms of the age of the victims. Mr. Mayor's victims were all adult women that he was not familiar with, not acquainted with prior to sexually assaulting them. This is Dion Mayer. He's the subject of our level 3 meeting. As I mentioned, he's 30 years old now. He came to prison when he was 17, 18, certified as an adult, which doesn't happen that frequently. Either these were serious offenses committed by a young person. So here's some demographic information, kind of where he's generally living. And as I mentioned before, he has a registration history. He has 3 separate sex offense convictions against adult women. One was he approached a woman in her car. I believe that's this one. Yep. So let's see, 2013, he was 16, approached a woman who was getting into her car, sexually assaulted her, I think digitally penetrated her vagina, and then she was able to kind of fend him off, and he ran away, got left the area at that point. That was in, let's see, I think July of 2013, something like that. Later that year, convicted of more criminal sexual conduct offenses. He actually broke into a home of this adult woman, and she was, I think, in bed, surprised her, attempted to sexually assault her, I think grabbed her breast during that offense, and then kind of got spooked and left the area as well. And then the third offense, when he was 17, was I think September of 2013, when he was finally caught, uh, entered another woman's residence and actually sexually assaulted her. Um, there was actual penile vaginal penetration there. Got a 172-month commitment to the Commissioner of Corrections, which he was just released on now. He is subject to what's called intensive supervised release, which is where Robin's going to come in and talk about her role with Mr. Mayor. He was assigned a level 3 in November of this year, and then just released a couple days ago, yesterday actually, or 2 days ago on Monday. He'll be under supervision until 2041, and he'll be subject to registration for lifetime. So he'll count every time he moves, any updates on school, home, education, any of that stuff, he'll have to update the BCA with that. But for now, I will turn it over to Robin, who's going to be working with Mr. Mayor on supervision.
Thank you, Brian. So I will talk about Mr. Mayor and the type of supervision he will be on while he's till 2041. So he is on what we call intensive supervised release. So folks in Minnesota, when they are released from prison, are either on supervised release or intensive supervised release. And I have been a ISR agent is what we call that, and ISR supervision for about 19 years. And the clients we serve, due to their risk assessments in prison, if they're high enough, they get put on ISR supervision. All level 3s in the state of Minnesota are on intensive supervised release their entire release period. And as long as Mr. Mayor stays a level 3, he will be on ISR. Most clients are on ISR anywhere from 6 months to a year, but all level 3s remain on this type of supervision. We kind of have a multi purpose approach when we supervise our clients. Primarily, why we place somebody on ISR is to increase public safety. Our clients have been deemed to be a risk to public safety, so we want to do everything that we have at our disposal to increase that safety. Obviously, nothing is 100%. We can't guarantee that Mr. Mayor won't commit a new crime, but we try to put him as many things as possible to make his reintegration into the community positive and protect the public at the same time. So that really starts with pre-planning. So we've been working with Mr. Mayor and his case manager prior to his release from prison, working with those people he deems as his support people in his life, family, friends, and folks he views as positive people in his life. We want to collaborate with them to increase his success. We all our clients on ISR, and especially level 3s when they're released from the prison, are placed on GPS monitoring. So that's an ankle monitor that they wear, and there's not really a specific time frame. It can't be forever. It's not going to be till 2041, but it is placed on Mr. Mayor until we see enough progress where we take it off, or if down the road at any time we have concerns, we can always, that's a tool we have in our toolbox, we can always put somebody back on the bracelet if we have concerns. The GPS that we use is active, so I can look at that at any time, see where he is at. We can put different areas around town where he can't be, and we have 24-hour access to that. If there's any violations while someone's on GPS, if they cut their bracelet, if they enter an area of town they're not supposed to be, we get notified 24 hours a day. An ISR agent is on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So we always have somebody who would respond immediately. And we work with our local law enforcement to, if we need their assistance in locating somebody, or if it rises to a level if somebody is we can't find them, if we issue a warrant, we would work with the Department of Corrections Fugitive Unit and our local law enforcement. We transport our clients and make sure they get to their residence that we've approved. Their movement in the community has to be approved. They're not just out and doing whatever they want. Literally, their day-to-day activities of who they're around, where they go, what they're doing, where they work, what phones they have. We can monitor their cell phones, and all our level 3s have, we monitor their cell phones. I have a small caseload, as do my partners in ISR, so we're able to have frequent face-to-face contacts. Since Mr. Mayor's been out this week, I think we've seen him almost every day. And a lot of our visits are random, unannounced. We check for making sure people aren't using chemicals that they're not supposed to. We can also incorporate with sex offenders polygraphs, so we can we do those on a regular basis to ensure that they haven't violated in a way maybe we aren't aware of. And so that's another way we can help supervise. We also have folks in the community, if somebody's living in a staff facility, that see our clients on a daily basis. And we really try to do as much as we can to partner with our clients, make sure they're making positive changes, but we also will respond appropriately if somebody decides not to follow their conditions of release, not to make those changes. Will determine the way we supervise somebody. And we will also incorporate some type of treatment with folks. So some clients have a lot of chemical use history, so we may have them do chemical use or chemical dependency treatment. Some clients need to do sex offender treatment in the community. We have cognitive skills classes, or it could be a combination of all three, depending on what they need. If they're working somewhere in the community, we will partner with their boss to make sure they're aware of their situation. If they move while they're on supervision, we have to approve where they're going to move and where they're going to live. They can't just dictate that. They have to get that approved. We are available if anybody in the community wants to reach us. They can call our main number, and my name's Robin Wood. They can ask for me. Mr. Mayor's direct agent is Eric Williams, but we work as a team. So we can be reached through our main number, and then the front desk can patch you through to us. And then if somebody has a heightened concern for a particular reason, or they're a past victim, or there's some way they want to talk to us more, we can also meet in person, but we want to communicate with the public as much as we can. There are some privacy issues, but with level 3s, a lot of it is public information, so we can share a lot and at least hear your concerns and give you information to help reassure on some level that we're doing everything in our power to protect you while also supporting our client. We also want to reiterate, if you see this person in the community, or there's suspicious behavior, or you know they may be doing something, probably wouldn't be the time just to call us. And if you don't get us right away, we would want you to call 911 to report that. The police department knows how to reach us 24 hours a day, but we would want you to call 911 to report immediate concerns, and then we can get involved down the road. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Heather Coling. I'm a victim services specialist with the Minnesota Department of Corrections. I'm on the Victim Services and Restorative Justice Unit. I handle all sexual violence cases on our unit. I'm going to talk today about how to family safety plan, start these conversations with your community, with your loved ones. But I do just want to highlight, you've already taken the biggest step. Like, this is really scary information for people to receive, and you've made it to this point in the recording. So you chose to come to the website, get more information on this individual, and be more informed and more aware instead of just scared. So I want to thank you for taking the time to do that. I also just want to call out and thank the Rochester Police Department for being willing to get this information out to the community. These can be difficult conversations to have. They're not fun things to post or tell the community about, but they're really, really important. And so we appreciate when a community partner is willing to have those conversations. Another thing you can do specifically for Mr. Mayer, because he is on supervision until 2041, if you are concerned and want proactive notification on him or anybody else that's under the supervision of the DOC in prison or on parole or community supervision, you can register for Minnesota Haven. You can access the registration form by going to the Minnesota Department of Corrections website. And as soon as you pull up the page, it's about halfway down. You'll see a really big icon about halfway down on the right that says Minnesota Haven, or you can call our unit. I'll have our information up later. This will give proactive notification if anything were to change on Mr. Mayer, like if he were to get a new agent assigned, which might indicate that he's moved to another county. Or if you were to return to prison, you would proactively be notified that his custody status has changed. His information will be available publicly on the website, as we've mentioned, because he's a level 3. Registering for Haven would just proactively notify you if something has changed. This is different than the enhanced notification that we're doing now. It's notification of publicly available information. But again, the primary difference is you would receive proactive notification if something changed with him versus having to remember to check the website regularly. I'm going to go through some safety planning discussions. I want to make it very clear, however, that this is in no way to imply that the victims on any of these cases did or did not do something to welcome the sexual violence that occurred. So while I'm going to do general safety planning tips, this is not necessarily specific to these cases. The responsibility for abusive behavior always lies with the person being abusive and not the person they harm. So I just want to give a very clear statement that this is not victim blaming in nature. Mr. Mayer is solely responsible for the crimes that he has committed. However, with these types of presentations and giving information about sexual violence, we don't want you thinking about just Mr. Mayer. We want to think of all of sexual violence and kind of give that analogy of a funnel, right? So at the top, we have all the sexual violence that we know occurs in the state of Minnesota. Only a portion of that gets reported. Only a portion of that gets charged. Only a portion of that gets sentenced. Only a portion of that goes to prison, right? So by the time we're down to Mr. Mayer, we're well down that funnel. So as community, as family, we really want you pouring safety planning efforts into all of sexual violence, not just Mr. Mayer. So I just want you to kind of keep that in mind as I go through these tips. The biggest one I wanted to bring up is just safety in social settings. As mentioned, Mr. Mayer committed his crimes against strangers, often in public spaces or within their own home. So we want to highlight some safety in social settings. The biggest thing I want to say is trust your instincts. Humans are one of the few creatures that will stay in an uncomfortable situation out of politeness. If something feels wrong, it's probably because it is, and it is okay to excuse yourself from those situations. Make a plan A and a plan B. I think we've gotten really used to being able to have constant access to our loved ones, have Life 360 or some other app that tracks them and tells you exactly where your kids are. I remember the days where I had to call my mom on the payphone at the mall and let it ring twice and hang up so I could get the quarterback and then meet her at the specific exit we had planned previously. We're so used to having GPS on our phones and being able able to call anybody from wherever, that we don't often have phone numbers memorized or a backup plan in case we lose our phone or lose connection. So I just encourage you to, as you're planning to go out into the world, to go out for a night, to do something you enjoy, you should go do all those things, but have a backup plan in case something goes awry, especially with logistics. Protect your drink while you're out. Again, this is not in Mr. Mayor's history specifically, but we do know alcohol and drug facilitated rape is a thing. So protect your drink, keep an eye on your friends, and know that it's okay to lie. Like I mentioned, if you are feeling uncomfortable in a situation, it is okay to lie to remove yourself from that situation. If nobody's told you that before, I'm telling you now. It is okay to just say, my neighbor's goldfish has a funeral and I have to go. You do not owe anybody anything. So it is okay to lie to remove yourself from those situations. Be an active bystander. If you see something going on, it's okay to create a distraction to try to make sure somebody's safe. You can ask directly. I know that can make some people uncomfortable, but if a situation doesn't seem right, it is okay to ask somebody, are you okay? Do you need help? I don't know too many people that would get mad being asked that, but it can go a really long way for somebody who might be in an unsafe situation. Rally others, extend your support. Part of community notification and building that community awareness is building those safe communities that will let people know this is not okay here. We're going to intervene if we see something. We're going to call the police if we see something. We're going to call Robin and Eric and their team if we see something, right? It's important that we as community hold those spaces and just know that our actions do matter in these situations. Even if it's uncomfortable to step forward, just know it's really important to do so. So going back to that broad end of the funnel, nationally, we know that 1 in 9 girls under the age of 18 experience sexual assault and 1 in 20 boys under the age of 18. Again, Mr. Mayor's victim pool is not and has not been juveniles. It has been adult females. However, we know as professionals, when most people get a notification that there's a predatory offender in their area, they immediately become concerned about their kids. So I do think it's important to speak to you about how to have these conversations with your kiddos. If you haven't been having them, if you don't have a family safety plan yet, and this is what's prompting you to think about that, we want to take advantage of that opportunity because it is really important to have these conversations as a whole. So this is nationally, but we're going to look a little more close to home. So I pulled this data from the Minnesota Student Survey, which is available publicly on the Department of Education website. I pulled the results from the 2022 survey. They do them every 3 years, so there are results from 2025, but they haven't all been uploaded in this pretty comparable form yet. So I'm still using the 2022 data. I did pull it specifically for the Rochester Public School District. Again, I give a shout out to the police department. I want to shout out your school district. This is voluntary for them to participate in these things. It takes a lot of work from school staff to do, but they're really important because it helps us know what's going on with our students. These student surveys are several pages long. They ask things like, do you participate in extracurriculars? Do you get enough sleep? Do you eat your vegetables? But it does also ask questions about sexual violence. So on page 27, there are 2 questions. One, has anyone who is not a relative or a family member? So remembering Brian's pie charts he presented, this would be asking about anybody that was an acquaintance or a stranger. Has anyone who's not a relative or family member ever forced, tricked, or pressured you to do something sexual against your wishes? By the time we get over to the juniors, we can see that 1 in 10 girls and just under 1 in 20 boys were reporting that, yes, they had experienced this. And then, has any relative or family member ever pressured, tricked, or forced you to do something sexual or done something sexual against your wishes? Again, when we go all the way over, none of the boys said that was a yes for the juniors, 3% of the girls. So if we're looking at national prevalence, we would really be combining those numbers. So as you can see, locally, we are tracking with the national statistics. There's one other question that gets asked on the next page, page 28. This is, have you been in a casual or serious relationship where your partner ever pressured, tricked, or forced you to do something sexual or did something sexual to you. So presumably this would be juvenile and juvenile. The double asterisk just means they did not ask the 8th graders this question. But again, if you look over at the juniors, we have 16% of the girls saying, yes, this has happened to them. And again, we have about 3% of the boys. So again, we're tracking with those national statistics. We're at that 1 in 9 for the females. We're at just under that 1 in 20 for the males. The reason I bring this up is if you find out Mr. Mayor moves tomorrow or comes back to prison, or you move away from Rochester and you don't have those 18 level 3s, right, in your zip code, we still have to have these conversations. It's still occurring in our communities. It's still occurring in our neighborhoods. We do these presentations all over the state of Minnesota. I've never gone anywhere where these numbers are 0. So just remember that we do still have to talk to our kids about this, even if you find out Mr. Mayor leaves. So how do we do that? I'm going to give some very quick examples of how to start these conversations with your kids. I could teach a whole college course on this, but I've got about 10 or 15 minutes. So I'm going to just give some really quick, actionable steps that you could start doing relatively quickly. So with children, we want to teach them the names of their body parts. Those cutesy names don't really work because we might miss a disclosure. Somebody saying, like, my uncle licked my cookie, to those of us that work in the sexual violence field would perk our ears up as something concerning, but might not necessarily do so for the general public. That's why it's important to teach the proper names for body parts so we don't miss disclosures when they occur. Along with that, we need to teach that some parts of the body are private. Private means we don't look at them or touch them on anybody else, and we don't allow anybody to look at them or touch them on us. Now, there may be some situations where somebody may need access to their body, so we want to explain that, right? Like a doctor doing a physical exam, a caregiver assisting with a hygiene activity, right? That goes along with that body education we want to do with kids. But those examples I just provided should never be a secret from mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever takes care of the kiddo. It's okay for them to say no. It's okay for them to ask questions. Those are the things we want to start telling our kids and teaching our kids about. That goes into later conversations about consent. But at a young age, just starting to teach them the names of their body and what they can expect about people accessing their body can go a really long way in combating sexual violence. Some other examples would be to talk about secrets. Secrets and isolation is a very big tactic that predatory offenders can utilize. So a quote I like to give parents is, we don't have secrets in our household, just surprises. Because we may still have, Christmas gifts and birthday presents that we don't want the kids telling everybody. But surprises are happy things that we share with people that we love. Secrets have a level of shame about them. There's kind of power dynamics that take place with secrets. So using that surprise language just takes that tool and tactic away from somebody that might try to exploit it. Reassure them that they won't get into trouble if they come to you asking questions. We often describe child victims as dipping their toe in when they make a disclosure. They may say something small to see if you're a safe person for them to talk to. So as adults, if we have overreactions or big reactions, even if it's not directed as the child, right? Even if it's our own distress or our own feelings, a child may no longer want to talk about it because they think they're in trouble or it's caused you some form of grief or sadness, which they don't want to do. So as much as you can, we want to reassure them they won't get in trouble if they ask these types of questions. And we want to stay as neutral as possible when we're talking to them about these topics. And when they come to you, make time for them. I was an advocate in the community where I live for a very long time, and I cannot tell you how often I would sit with an adult who was a childhood victim of sexual abuse who thought they told their parents, and the same parent who did not realize that's what they were trying to do. So if a child comes to you with a body question and you don't have time for it, let them know it's okay that they asked and you want to make sure you answer it, and then go back later and answer that question fully when you have time. For the teenagers, we can and we should age that conversation up. Thinking back to Brian's pie chart, right, where it was divided into thirds with the ages, The smallest age range was 13 to 17. That's less than 10% of the population, but it made up a third of the victims, right? What's happening here? Teenagers enjoy a newfound kind of freedom and independence, which we want them to, right? As parents and caregivers, that's where we don't have as much oversight on who they're spending their time with. But that's also why we need to talk to teens about what sexual violence is and what it looks like. It can be a very easy to use the media to make it relevant. I don't know about your household, but at my household, we have true crime on fairly regularly. Often just with the news, there's references to sexual violence. It can be a very easy transition to just say, do you know what you would do if that happened to a friend of yours? Don't look the teenager in the eye when you ask the question. They're more likely to answer it. But that opens the door to see where they're thinking. It might surprise you. They might disclose that it has already happened to a friend of theirs and they've had this conversation. We also know that kids are more likely to talk to a peer before they talk to an adult. So we also want to show that we care about their friend's safety as well and ensure they have the tools to respond in a situation like that if it were to occur. Many of us know someone or have ourselves experienced some form of domestic violence, dating violence, or sexual violence. If you're comfortable, use that experience to tell a safety story. It can identify you as a safe person to come to, that you're a quote adult that gets it, right? And it can make it more likely that they'll come to you later because they know you've gone through it before. And talk about sexual assault directly. Again, especially with those teenagers, we know they make up a large chunk of the victim pool. We have to call sexual assault what it is. We have to give a name to it. That does also go along with talking about a healthy relationships and what those look like and what green flags look like. But we have to give them a language to identify when something is becoming abusive. All of this information should go into an overall family safety plan. With the family safety plan, you want to educate everyone in the family about what the expectations are, start talking with them about abuse. And I want to make it very clear that when it comes to your loved one, the kids in your lives, your friends, your family, your neighbors, no one should be above criticism. If somebody's uncomfortable because we're talking to them about our family boundaries, that's maybe not someone we want to have in our household. Set clear family boundaries, which are things like, when do we knock on doors? Who can share a bed with whom? What level of nudity is acceptable in the living room, right? Things like that. Those are boundaries we would want to start talking about with our kids. And we would want to let them know that this is the expectation we have for you and anybody that enters our home. And it's also the same set of rules we have for you when you're in somebody else's home. Get safe adults involved in these types of conversations and know your local resources and how to use them before you need them. And I'm going to show you your local resources before the end of this. I did have somebody ask me once, and I think it's important to note, it goes along with this exercise as well. Like, you showed me that pie chart that says it's probably going to be an adult that I know that does this. Why do I want to get safe adults involved with my kids? That's a valid question, right? What I'll again say is it's nuanced and I have 15 minutes, but my quick answer to that is a safe adult is not going to be more interested in their relationship with your kid than with you. A safe adult is not going to give gifts to your child and tell them not to tell you about it. A safe adult is not going to give your child a cell phone and communicate with them behind your back or send them Facebook messages. It's nuanced. But what I'm going to say is we want safe adults in our kids' lives because we know that when kids have safe adults in their lives, they're more successful moving forward, right? That extended support network is important, but we don't want adults in their lives who aren't safe. And so that's why I'm saying, like, setting up these boundaries, establishing the rules for your household is really important. This is a really quick exercise that I like to give folks. It's a really easy one to do in the car. So that's asking a kiddo, if something happened to you, if somebody hurt you, who are 5 people you could talk to? You might want to know who they are as their parent or caregiver. Make sure they are, in fact, safe individuals. I did this exercise with a client's child. She thought something was going on, but he hadn't disclosed anything. And I asked him this question. And one of the answers he gave me was an advocate. And I was like, I'm an advocate. But I was really surprised to see that he said that because, as far as I knew, my client hadn't worked with anybody else and I had never met with him. So I asked him what an advocate does. And he told me that an advocate are the people that take you to church and have sex with you. That became a mandated report. Those people were then charged and convicted. But had we not asked this question, I don't know that we would have found that information out. I'm not saying everybody's kids will give them that type of disclosure, but what I am saying is you might be surprised who your child feels close to. It might be a name you weren't expecting. And as you're reviewing this, think of the inverse. As an adult, who are 5 kids in your life that might come to you? Do you know what you would say? Do you know what you would do? I hope the conversations we've started give you a little more insight into that. But if it hasn't, I would highly encourage you to reach out to your local programs. So the next slide is going to put up our contact information for my units. You're certainly welcome to reach out to us. If you'd like to get registered for Haven and can't figure that form out, you feel free to give us a call and we'll get that done over the phone. If you have questions about Mr. Mayor or anybody else under DOC supervision or are a victim of somebody under the DOC supervision, please give us a call. We'd be happy to get you whatever information we can. In Rochester and Olmsted County, you do have some local programs available at your disposal. So there is the Women's Shelter and Support Center, specifically working with people of domestic violence. This is their contact information. And Olmsted County does have DNO victim services as well for additional support. This is their contact information. If you're working through a family safety plan and you have additional questions, or you would like somebody to come out and speak to your school, your place of work, your faith community, these are the resources I would highly recommend that you reach out to. There's some other links that are just really good ones to note. The BCA does have a criminal history that you can run on people with their first name, last name, and date of birth. You can try Mr. Mayor as a practice. You have his first name, last name, and date of birth as part of this meeting. There is a 10-year drop-off period, so you won't see everything if the crimes are older than that, but it is free and it is an option in Minnesota. The Department of Corrections website has all of the research and publications that Brian noted in his portion of the presentation. It does have the locator, so anybody within the prison system or on supervision under DOC, it can let you know who their case manager or supervising agent is and kind of where they're currently located. And that public registrant search that we also reference. So that's all the level 3s. You could pull all of them up for your county, for your zip code, or just all of them in general. And this is the last batch of resources I like to highlight. These are some national options. We talked about the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center a bit. The other one I really wanted to highlight is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I think most people think of NCMEC as it relates to John and Adam Walsh or for finding missing kids, but they actually have a lot of really great resources for parents. I didn't talk about digital safety today just because it's not really a part of Mr. Mayor's pattern of offending, but it's kind of the next trend that we're really seeing with sexual violence, especially since the pandemic. We're seeing an increase in online sexual exploitation and sextortion. We're hearing from kids that they don't really know how to say no to somebody that they like when these online events are occurring. So NCMEC has a Net Smarts program, Net Smarts with a Z, that provides fun interactive videos from toddler and preschool age all the way up to almost college, talking to kids about online safety, how to be safe online. So especially if you're a parent that isn't super tech savvy and isn't really comfortable, those are some free resources that are available for you in starting to teach your kids about digital literacy. So I wanted to make sure to highlight that. And then Brian is going to wrap us up with this last slide here.
All right, thanks, Heather. Yeah, just to kind of bring it all back around, just final slide. I know we've been talking about Mr. Mayor specifically, but as a general rule, a lot of what Heather talked about, just educating your family, friends, loved ones. We talk about the 3 90s oftentimes. So 90% of the people we've found through research do not reoffend sexually. 90% of the people are known to the victim. Now, this was not the case with Mr. Mayor. They were strangers, which is very rare. Like the earlier slide I showed, it was about 7% have not been previously known. And then 90% of the people have not been previously convicted of a sex offense. They may have other criminal history, but they're coming to law enforcement for the first time for a sex or sex-related offense. So we know about Mr. Mayer. We know he is on intensive supervised release. Robin and her team are going to be meeting with him. I mean, they can go to his workplace, his home, 4 times a week. You know, the initial contacts are intense, as it says, intensive supervised release. He's on GPS monitoring. He's going to have to register. We know about this particular individual now. It's the other folks that just kind of that general education piece that we want to stress, as mainly Heather talked about in terms of, it's really about most of the time about the relationship with people and not the residents. We've had some of these communities have enacted what we call residency restrictions, where somebody moves into a community and the community says, hey, they can't live within 2,000 feet of a school, park, daycare, right? Well, you pull up a map of, let's say, Elk River. Pull up a map of Elk River, and there's really not a spot that's 2,000 feet from a park, school, daycare. That so essentially what it's doing is moving those people out of the community, not allowing them to be a part of that. And really, what we know is it's not residential proximity; it's the relationship. Most of the time, it's somebody that they know. There's a grooming process. There's an acquaintanceship. They build that relationship. Again, not like Mr. Mayer, but the vast majority of people, it's about that social proximity piece. So we just want to highlight that to kind of wrap things up. And I think let's see if we got a last slide. So there's my information, Heather's information, and Detective Burdick from Rochester Police Department. Again, call if needed. And, portion of Heather's talked about 911 if that's rises to that level too. So with that, we'll wrap things up.
Thank you. We appreciate you presenting to our audience, and that concludes the presentation.